Oh, we start now. We do show now. Yes, we do. Now is the time for science. 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 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 660, recorded on Wednesday, February 28th, 2018. Living la Vida Ciencia! Hey everyone, I'm Dr.Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we are going to fill your head with a giant virus, dog poo, and ants. But first...
Disclaimer. The longer we wait for something, the more we appreciate it. Or resent it for making us wait so long. Or long for it more for making us appreciate how much we would otherwise be resentful. But obviously we aren't in this case, as here we are waiting for whatever it might be. And whatever it is you are waiting for, hopefully you will find it right here on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back. We are back with more science, and it's been another wonderful week. Ready? You ready? I brought stories. Yeah, I brought stories about microbes living their lives. That's right, they do. Sexy monkeys and ape gestures. Yeah, what do you have, Justin?
I've got some really big Neander news, some baddie abilities, and ancient smokers.
Ancient smokers. All right. And Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh, I brought some flopper ants, and I also brought some dog poop. Oh, and proboscis monkeys.
All right. We got some fun stuff. Flopper ants?
You know, like floppers in soccer. Oh, I've been hit. Oh.
That's right. That's what I thought you meant. All right. I can't wait to hear about that. Let's jump into the show. And as we do, I want to remind everyone that you can subscribe, if you are not already, to the TWIS podcast on iTunes, on Google Play Podcast Portal, Stitcher, Spreaker, and TuneIn. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just look for This Week in Science, or just visit twis.org, TWIS.org. But now it is time for the science stories. It's alive.
That's alive. Me? I'm alive.
You're alive. Right. We can look at you and say, you're alive. You eat. You have bodily functions. You live and then you die, right?
Oh, not Blair.
Nope.
Some of us procreate. You know, it's another thing that living organisms do. Another thing living organisms do is create amino acids. Their cells have all the machinery for metabolism to be able to create amino acids, to create all of the proteins from genes that we need to exist, right? Well, in Brazil, 2 new giant viruses. I love giant viruses. These giant viruses have been found, and they were published about in Nature Communications by the researchers who found them. These are big. When I talk about big, I mean, we think about viruses as these little tiny, incomplete, not kind of on the verge of life, but not really life. You know, they have to infect cells in order to exist. They have to hijack cellular machinery to be able to get things done, to be able to reproduce themselves, right? They can't even reproduce by themselves. They need other cells to do that. Well, these giant viruses are huge. They have genes, this one virus, both of them are called Tupan viruses. Tupan is the South American god of thunder, Tupan. And this Tupan virus, Deep Ocean, and the other one, Tupan virus, Soda Lake, they were named based on the areas in which they were found. They are up to 2.3 microns in length, which is, when you're talking about viruses, actually really big. And their DNA, each of them had about 1.5 million base pairs of DNA, which is actually more than some species of bacteria. So these viruses are bigger than some bacteria in some cases. Now, these Tupan viruses infect a lot of different hosts. They infect lots of single-celled organisms, protists, amoebas. But so far, the researchers don't think they pose any threat to humans. The interesting thing about their genome, that in addition to being as large as it is, it contains all of the DNA to make all 20 amino acids. They don't know if they actually do make their own amino acids, but they have all the instructions to do so. They don't need to borrow the instructions from their host cells. So now the question is, where'd they get it? Where did they?
Why are they still viruses then?
Right. Well, they do still infect host cells. But that is the question. Are they just virus? Are they viruses? I mean, yes, they are viruses based on their DNA, their makeup, the way they infect themselves. They've got a capsid, which is the coat that viruses have. They look like viruses, but they're really big, and they do. And the question is, how much longer are they going to need cells?
Well, yeah, or the other way. Maybe this is a strategy that was adopted a long time ago. Hey, we could be like you and be bacteria and do all this work making stuff, or we could just set it aside and utilize what you've already built.
Right. And so the researchers think that these viruses, the debate is now even a little bit more heated as to whether viruses in general should be considered life. And this category of viruses specifically, some researchers think that they should not be classified as living because they have received this genetic material through horizontal gene transfer and, in fact, probably stolen it from their host bacteria or their host amoebas over generations and generations. But then bacteria have horizontal gene transfer, and plants have horizontal gene transfer. And we've even seen in other research that even higher organisms than plants have horizontal gene transfer. So the question is, if you're going to say, oh, well, you stole that gene as your argument that this thing should not be categorized as alive, well, then you're going to be talking about a whole bunch of organisms and having to argue that point. I don't know. But anyway, giant viruses in Brazil, and they were found in really neat locations too. Those are it's fascinating to think of the locations that one of them was discovered in the deep ocean near Brazil. This isn't just floating around near the surface using photosynthetic organisms. This is a deep dweller. And then the other, a soda lake, that is going to be an alkaline environment. Both of them kind of extreme environments, so to speak. And so maybe these large genomes help these viruses survive, infect their hosts, and reproduce and continue to infect more hosts as they live. Well, or not live.
It's interesting. I think it's time for everyone to just give up and create a new branch to the kingdom of life. Enough. There's been this question for so long, but the more we learn about viruses, the more complex their behavior becomes to us, the more elements they have in common with other forms of life. Just call them a weirdo thing. Like, we have slime molds. That's life. What the heck are those? Just let it go.
It's a weirdo thing.
Just make viruses their own family tree, and part of the kingdom of life. Just they get their own branch of the tree of life. Just everybody calm down. It's fine. There's a different kind of life. Deal with it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there is that question also of, is it it's a spectrum, right? So at one point there were just chemicals, and that, there were atoms. Atoms became molecules. Molecules connected together to become complex molecules, chemicals, right? They interacted with each other in a certain way and started having molecular reactions that led to other developmental things. The lipid bilayer became a thing. And then you have a viral capsid, you have RNA, you have DNA, these are all starting from physical principles, from the physics of attraction of atoms to each other. And it's a spectrum that grows and grows and builds and builds and builds to the complexity of the multiple forms of things that we call life now. But it's this wonderful spectrum.
Yeah. Well, and there's
gradient.
vertebrates, and there's invertebrates that depend on vertebrates to reproduce. So there's these weird lines that we draw that then other parts of the tree of life, then they violate. So the freshwater mussels that need to have their spores collected in the gills of a fish in order to be able to reproduce, are they not alive because they need another organism to reproduce? They're definitely alive.
Yeah. Interesting point you raised there. And then symbiotes who have to live with other organisms in order to get their nutrients to be able to survive. Yeah, these gradations and these categories. Oh, people, the lumpers and the splitters. But like I mentioned, extreme environments. And so there are 2 stories out this week about microbes living in extreme environments and how they suggest to us about the possibilities for places in the solar system that bacteria may exist. So first off, bacteria found in Chile's Atacama Desert, which is one of the driest places on the planet. Researchers were able to discover bacteria that can survive. They become spores and dry out, but then when moisture comes back again, they can start all their activities and reproduce and keep going as if there had been no dry period at all. But they can withstand up to a decade of dry weather in the Atacama Desert. So these researchers published their paper in, let's see, where was it? It was in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And they found that these signs of life, following a rainfall event, says one of the researchers, there's a flush of activity and cells begin replicating. And so they noticed this in this region of the desert. They looked at amounts of ATP and DNA that they found in DNA microbial databases. And they found that during the wet years, bacteria along the coastal region of this desert resemble the microbial community typical of sandy soils, and DNA from drier areas belonged mostly to bacteria found in very dry deserts or in salt flats, where they can survive as spores or barely functioning cells. And what they think is that the Atacama Desert can act as a working model for which planet do you think in our solar system?
Mars.
Mars, exactly. That there are dry regions in Mars where underneath the surface of the soil, there may be enough water within the soil to keep hardy bacteria going, or there is precipitation overnight. There are nightly precipitation cycles that occur in areas of Mars where it may be just enough water in the first couple of centimeters of the soil to bring moisture to these organisms, allow them to reproduce, replicate, and to sustain themselves. And so it gives more and more hope to this idea that there may yet be microbial life on Mars. We find it in these dry places. Who knows? Could be on Mars.
And if we go and we find that there is none, now we have a great candidate to send to Mars.
There you go.
Exactly. Yeah, we can, there's nothing there on Mars. Let's send those Atacama desert bacteria. They're pretty hardy. Yeah. But if we head to the icy water ocean moon of Enceladus at any point in the future, we may also want to look for bacteria, according to a study that was just published in Nature Communications this week. Researchers simulated the ocean conditions, though not water necessarily, but water, organic molecules, methane, ethane, and other compounds that may exist in this liquid substance, this liquid ocean that's underneath the icy surface of this cold moon outside of Saturn. And they simulated a bunch of situations. They put some extremophile bacteria that could exist in they were methanogens. They're methane, they're organisms that can live off of methane, and they are methanogenic archaeobacteria, these extremophiles. And they found that one particular species they looked at, Methanothermococcus okinawensis, can produce methane under physiochemical conditions extrapolated for Enceladus. And so under certain situations, which they believe could exist on Enceladus, this earthbound archaeobacteria could survive. So again, we will either, yes, exactly. We will either go there and find signs of this bacteria existing on this moon, or there's nothing there. And so we could, seed the oceans just for the fun of it.
I think so. I think that should, I legitimately think that should be a good second effort. The first one, you look for life. You have the clean rooms at NASA. You try not to take any microbes to space, even though you know you are. And then you search diligently for a little while. If you find nothing, then you find the best the best capable survivor from our planet in like this extremophile, and you send it in our place, in our stead, as a representative of Earthlings.
We can't go there on our own, but this representative will survive in this place to the best of our earthly abilities.
And what better representative of Earth than a microbial life form? I mean, really, that's the dominant life form on this planet.
Well, we may have to argue a bit with the new planetary protection officer at NASA, Lisa Pratt, who has been instated. In her recent comments, she said, no more Teslas in space. They say no more.
It's fun.
That was her big thing.
That was
because we were gearing up to do another one.
Yeah, I think that advice is too late.
I feel like that was a one and done, right?
Yeah,
exactly. It's been done. No one's gonna do that again.
The second time you do it, they're like, okay, yeah. Now it's just space.
It's like next they're gonna send the semi truck into space. Tesla semi.
That would be pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah,
because the semi truck could actually have its own payload, which it could deliver somewhere. That would be,
just stuff it full of bacteria, apparently. Chock-a-block full of bacteria. Just send it right in there. Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, these test launches of rockets, they have to have some kind of payload. And so the argument is, if it's going to be a bunch of water or concrete, why do that when you could, put something artistic or fun or that makes a statement? But anyway, yes, there is a lot of space junk out there. And we do want to minimize our trash leaving in the solar system.
That's definitely true. But that's the weird kind of ironic thing about that is that that whole demonstration proved that you could return and reuse rockets. So in itself, it was an exercise to prove you could launch a thing and not throw away all the parts in the process. So that's actually kind of reducing the space junk. It would have been best to do that as some sort of mission with a drone on it or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was too much. It was too much for Elon to do at once, I think.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we may not be sending any more Teslas or semis into space, but maybe someday we will either be, if we don't find extremophiles living on other planets in our solar system, maybe we'll just send our own from earthly deep sea vent to an Enceladus liquid ocean. Exactly. We'll see. Justin, tell me about Neanderthals.
Humans kissing cousins with bigger brains, all but lost to history now. And maybe we outcompeted them, and that's why they're gone. Maybe we out-reproduced them and just had more numbers, and it's likely that we may have just interbred them out of existence. Fun fact, about 20% of fully functional Neanderthal DNA is floating about in the human gene pool today. So it's not all in one person. You got to go over here, get a little bit of there, go over to this area over here, take some of these genes. But you could make 20% of a Neanderthal. And maybe more. Maybe more. We're still looking. So we know that we did intermingle quite a bit. Many have sort of wondered, actually probably not me, mostly me, maybe, have wondered how that first interaction went down. How was that first meeting between modern man or modern woman and what was then modern Neanderthal? I think we humans tend to think of ourselves as representing the more sophisticated one in the coupling. After all, we had magnificent adventures in culture, like a throwing spear, right? And some art. We had decorative things. Neanderthals did not. Art, the symbolism that comes with art. This is the calling card of higher cognition. This is a modern human trait. It is ours alone. It likely is a big integral part of how we came up with language and everything else. Very modern human-y. Except maybe it's not.
Of course not.
What if we, in fact, were the lowbrow? What if we were the undercultured? What if we were the boringly brutish of the pair?
Well, nice guys finish last, so it makes sense.
Scientists have, that's not true.
I know.
Scientists have found first major evidence that Neanderthals, not modern humans, created the world's oldest known cave paintings. This is phenomenally huge. The cave paintings, these ancient Paleolithic Ice Age cave art, were all considered to be done by modern humans. This is not something that Neanderthals did. Except now, Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology, with help of some new techniques, we're able to more accurately date the paintings in 3 caves in Spain to more than 64,000 years ago, which, if you're keeping track of when people were where they were, was about 20,000 years before modern humans arrived in Europe. Meaning this Paleolithic...
They just used old paint, Justin. It's all a trick.
This is also some of these are really fascinating works. Like, they've got animals, dots, geometric signs. Some of these are perspective pieces, meaning when you're right up next to it, it's hard to tell that this is part of an animal over here and it's wrapping around a rock. But then when you walk back from a distance, that image becomes clearly uniform. So they had an amazing ability to have the 2D perspective that you would sort of picture on a flat painting on something that was anything but flat, but from a distance, it gives that appearance. Yeah. So thinking symbolically, and it's funny too. I just read, I didn't bring it to the show. It was from a week or two ago, where somebody was explaining that likely humans' cognitive abilities and our superiority over Neanderthals was likely because we used art and they didn't. We had come up with art first, and this had really ramped up our cognitive evolution. And I read this whole paper, and I thought, it's really interesting, but I don't know. And here it is. No, they had the art. They had some of the nicest art too. It's some really the cave paintings from the Neolithic, from the Paleolithic era, are some of the best cave paintings you'll ever see. They are absolutely gorgeous.
You heard it here from Doctor of Art History, Justin.
Doctor, not a real doctor, but still calls himself a doctor.
Yes, the best.
So they just
the very best.
So this has to be Neanderthal and no one else because of the date and the place. Like they don't think there was any mixing with.
Right. So what they used was uranium thorium dating, which is a new thing, which they used on the residues that are covering some of the paintings and rocks. And so basically what they were doing was dating the residue that covers the paintings, not the actual, the pigments themselves, but all the residue that had built up over time. And the residue that had built up dating back 64,000 years based on uranium thorium dating methods. So that gives the minimum age for what lies beneath. Certainly it could be older than that, but it says it's at least 64,000 years old.
Okay, so and even anything older than that would still have been Neanderthal for a bit.
For sure.
Yeah. Fascinating. So it's the timing, the dating, the location. There's no other explanation at that point in time.
So
no other human cousins. This isn't like a band of Denisovans who have
this is Europe, and we don't have the Denisovans there so much. They're going to be more. They're going to be more in the northeast, that location, and dating back much further. I don't know that we have evidence of Denisovans being around the 64,000, but again, this could be older than that. And there are humans who it is believed intermingled over 200,000 years ago with Denisovans somewhere in Siberia, who are this sort of mystery group of humans, the modern human DNA showing up in Denisovan finger fragments that we don't know anything about yet.
And when did Neanderthals and human ancestors first meet up, timeline-wise?
That would have been like the Middle East in about 30-ish thousand years ago.
Mm-hmm. So this is interesting because I was just looking at the oldest human cave paintings or human ancestor cave paintings, and those are, depending on which one you're looking at, between 30 and 40-ish thousand years ago. So what would be interesting is if it seems like everybody kind of started doing it around the same time.
Because the Neanderthals taught them.
So that's what I'm wondering, is if the Neanderthals were a precursor or if it emerged on its own in other areas. Right. If the humans were, big fat plagiarists of the cave paintings, they were like, that looks fun, I'm gonna try that. Oh, look what I did. Or if it's something that people of that developmental stage in the evolutionary tree are finding this artistic and record keeping parts of the brain at that time, if that's a common theme.
Yeah. It's an interesting question.
I think it probably has to do more with it being an ice age and you're spending a lot of time in a cave.
Yeah, there's no TV.
Like just getting bored. Right.
Yeah, no TV, no books, just so bored. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we need to, you know, hang out with the great apes some more, you know. Really pay attention to what the bonobos and the chimpanzees are doing in their spare time.
You know, the gorillas at the zoo really like to paint.
I saw a video of a pig painting the other day, so I'm just...
Yeah, well, that's true. And elephants can paint pretty much straight up shapes, so... Yeah.
I mean, it's a question of what is art, what is the painting. Bowerbirds make beautiful bowers of all blue items for their potential mates, you know, and there are fish. There's some species of fish that place rocks to attract potential mates. You know, it's a different, you know, and there's a question as to whether scrub jays and even elephants, whether they place items potentially in mourning when individuals die. So there's all these really interesting questions about that have potential artistic factors to them and could have been involved in this ability going way back. But then maybe with the start of culture and language and metaphorical representation of things in the real world, then it becomes this cave art and the trying to represent things.
Somewhere in the world, there's a couple of Neanderthals right now who are listening to this show.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, look at that. Humans just figured out that they didn't invent art. And now they're like, oh, art's just everything makes art. That's not a thing. That's no big deal. And now all of a sudden, right?
Oh, okay.
They've been like, oh, art all this time. And now it turns out they didn't invent it. Now they're just trying to downplay it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, but also, this is the very interesting intersection of art and science, which people don't talk about very much, but this is exactly it when you talk about birdsong and music, when you talk about what art is and what the mental processes are that make it. And also this kind of question of what is an expression of emotion? What is a metaphorical representation? What is a record-keeping device? This is where these two things that people want to think are so kind of opposed and different start to meet. And it gets very interesting.
Oh, yeah. It is fascinating. But this is just yet one more piece of data. And who knows, maybe somebody will make a discovery that determines that humans were in that location at that point in time. And it could change the entire story. We will keep our ears attuned to this development and many others like it to see how all of this archaeological stuff, it's like, and paleontological finds, it's are you digging in the right place? Have you found the right fossils to tell the story?
Yeah, and they found some of these caves with cave paintings off the coast of France.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these are submerged. So we need our marine
divers,
anthropology, archaeologists to.
Yeah, not a lot of those, I think.
I know, you got to get it all. Got to have somebody who just took every class in the sciences and go spelunking underwater.
Hey, you know, we're not going to spelunk right now, but do you know what time it is?
What time is it?
It's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
I have a fascinating story about African matabele ants. Either of you heard about these ants in the Ivory Coast?
No.
They are savage. They are predatory ants that eat termites.
I thought you were going to say people, and I was going to say I'm going to stay away from there. But
nope,
okay.
Termites. So they actually go out in raiding parties of 200 to 600 individuals, attack termites, and carry those termites back to the nest to feed their entire ant colony. So In the process, these termites bang up the ants quite a bit. And so you get some ant kind of casualties along the way. A lot of ants die. Also, some ants lose legs. Some of them end up with termite mandibles dug into their thorax. Where this gets interesting is, unlike our common ant that we think about all the time, the little black ants, they don't leave fallen comrades behind. They actually look after and look for injured ants, and they actually send out a distress signal pheromone. So they look for them. They find their injured buddies. Within 24 hours of being taken back to the nest, they can switch, if they've lost some legs, to a 4 or 5-legged gait way of walking that lets them run almost as fast as their 6-legged friends. So first of all, knowing that, this is why they don't cut their losses and leave ants behind. If you think about an ant colony, they are in the thousands, hundreds of thousands if it's a big nest. Then that means that you would be smart, especially with a prolific queen where there's new ants every day. Just leave him be. Let that ant die out in the sun and we'll have a new recruit tomorrow. But if you can recover enough to go out on further raids, then there's a reason to try to save injured ants. So here's where the science comes in. The Universität Würzburg in Bavaria, Germany, wanted to figure out how this process worked, because if an ant was injured badly enough, they would still leave them behind. So ants that were not injured are finding their injured friends, taking them home, caring for them, and they are leaving the really badly injured ones behind. Who is making this decision? Is it the paramedic ant, as they called it, or the wounded ant? And
you go on without me.
Exactly. So the way they figured this out, they tracked 208 ant raids out of 16 different colonies in the savanna woodland in Como National Park in the northern Ivory Coast. They dug up 14 colonies and surveyed them. They saw that these particular colonies were not as big as other ant colonies we see, around 900 to 2,300 ants. And they also captured ants and put them in laboratory nests to see what happened in a lab. In the lab, they ran experiments where they would place maimed nest mates where they were missing either 2 or 5 legs, yikes, in the path of raiding parties when returning home. So they would definitely come across these individuals that had 4 legs or 1. What they found was that the injured ants were the ones determining whether they'd be carried home or left to die. So it was kind of a go on without me scenario. But that's not because they're signaling somehow purposefully. It's because they behave differently depending on how badly they're injured. The ants that were usually had salvageable injuries, just a couple of missing legs, walked slow and stumbled. And when other ants came near them, they curled up into a pupa-like position. So like the fetal position for us, right? When another ant felt them with their antenna, they'd curl up. And this made them easier to carry home. And after all that, after this slow kind of stumbling, if the raid party passed them, they'd quickly speed up and follow them home. So that's why I called them flopper ants. They're going, I'm hurt, help me. Well, I'm not too hurt to not go home. So, the gravely injured ants, though, the ones that were very bad off, let's say only 1 leg left, flailed around wildly and made it really difficult for rescuers to pick them up at all. They were scrambling around. They were like, will you just sit still? No. Oh. So after a few attempts, the helper ant, the paramedic ant, would give up and leave. So the lost causes basically selected themselves out of being helped by being impossible. When the flopper ants, as I called them, the injured ants, arrived at the nest, these ants that helped them come back pulled tenacious termite pieces off of the injured insect bodies. So they pulled out any mandibles or anything like that. They cleaned wounds by licking them, which of course ants don't really have what we would think about as a tongue, but they have something similar. So they would basically lick at the wounds for several minutes in one sitting. So the researchers thought that this might have an antimicrobial agent in their saliva that has something to do with this. But that's definitely one of their next studies they're really interested in looking at, is what is happening with this licking behavior. When they were licked in their wounded areas, only 10% of the ants that were treated died. They had a 90% success rate, but without the medical attention. So even if they only had a couple legs missing, they were brought back to the nest, but then they were not treated. If they were prevented from being treated, 80% died.
Wow.
Yes, this is a huge impact of these quote-unquote paramedic ants. What's even more interesting is that if they identified an ant that made it back to the nest as heavily injured, they would groom them for a little bit and kind of stop prematurely, pull them out of the nest, carry them out of the nest, and those ants, every single time, died within 24 hours.
Wow.
So what we have is injured ants acting a specific way that the ant colony recognizes as salvageable or not. And then inside the nest, these paramedic ants giving 90% successful life-saving treatment. The next steps to this research is to figure out how the ants know where the injury is on an ant's body, how they know when to stop treating them, why they lick for as long as they do, right? If the behavior is prophylactic, or if there is a therapeutic element, which would be crazy, but possible.
Well, go lick your wounds.
Yeah. So well, it's crazy to me because
actually the newest product by Dr. Justin is not a real doctor. Ant spit. It's for what ails you.
That's right. Yeah. No, but I mean, our mouths have bacteria in them, have enzymes. We have all sorts of things that if you get a cut, you can lick it, suck on it, and it will potentially help to keep it clean enough that it won't get infected. It can help if it's not like a massive injury,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. I mean,
I was wondering
although you don't want to get bitten by a human because technically humans have very dirty mouths compared to, anyway, it's complicated.
Yeah. It's what I think is interesting though, is also this indication that getting attention in itself is healing to them, and being isolated is, I give up. If there's this weird mental process in these ants as well, seems insane to me, but
yeah. How does an ant know it's beyond help?
How does it know?
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. I don't know. These are ants are fascinating.
Yeah. And now, would you like to hear about dog poop?
After that, sure.
Oh, great. So something that some dogs will do that dog owners perhaps do not enjoy. What do you think is a huge pet peeve of dog owners that their dogs do involving dog poop?
Pooping.
Not the poop itself. Don't get a dog if you don't want it to poop. It's eating the poop. So this is something that, if you think about it, there's a very common trope of this idea that, don't eat it. Oh, he ate it. And then later you let your dog lick you on the face and you go, oh man, I just remembered what happened at the park. So this is a common trope in the dog owners' world. This is called coprophagy. I've talked a lot on the show about coprophagous animals and things like that. It literally translates to feces eating. And it's an interesting phenomenon in the dog community because dogs are very clean in other ways. They really like to keep their sleeping areas clean. They avoid areas that are full of poop. They'll kind of walk carefully around it. They try not to step in poop. So there's this idea that dogs have a lot of ingrained behavior to keep their area clean because they live in packs and because they don't want to spread disease around. So why does this dog poop eating thing happen so much? Well, first of all, this study, it's actually from UC Davis, found in a study of more than 1,000 dog owners, actually only 16% saw their dogs consume feces at least 6 times or more.
So what's I'll let you. But what's weird is like I was like thinking like I've had dogs. I have never known a dog to eat dog poop, but I had one dog that was obsessed with cat poop and would eat any cat poop and would go looking for it and knew where the spots where the cats like to go and would start pulling in this direction to go eat cat poop. And I was like, I figured there was. I don't know. There's something in cat poop that this dog needs for proper digestion, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, yeah, and I've even heard these theories that it's something that puppies do when they're younger and then they grow out of it, and some dogs never grow out of it and all this other stuff. But there hasn't been a lot of research on it. So yeah, only 16% of these more than 1,000 dogs consumed feces at least 6 times, and 77% recorded never seeing their pets eat other dogs' poop. Yeah. So here are the key factors that they tested: age, gender, whether the dog had been spayed or neutered, whether it was house trained, whether it had been weaned or removed from its mother early, and what the rest of their diet was. What one do you think had effect on whether or not they would eat poop?
The rest of the diet.
None of them. Oh. None of them had an effect.
Nothing. No predictive factors.
None.
Okay, great.
Even all of the stuff that you buy at the store designed to prevent eating poop, punishment for your dog eating poop, all these had no effect on poop eating behavior. The best way to predict whether a dog eats feces, do you want to guess?
As if they've done it before.
No.
Oh.
Is how much access to poop they have. That's it. This is particularly if it's fresh. Over 80% of coprophagic dogs only consume poo less than 2 days old. So if you don't want your dog to eat poop, clean up after it.
Says science.
Says science. Dogs described as greedy, those in the households with 2 or more dogs, were more likely to be coprophagic. So if they were the greedy individual in a group of dogs, they were more likely to eat poop. And terriers and hounds were the most likely to eat poop. Poodles never ate poop in the whole story.
That's probably something to do with poodle owners now.
Yeah,
probably.
So
fascinating.
The other thing that this study kind of gleaned, which I think it's a leap, but sure, it's a reason for further study. Let's say it's possible that poo eating is an evolutionary remnant from ancestors of dogs, where feces could be a source of disease. So by eating it right away, you're keeping it from festering or growing bacteria in a den. So here's the caveat I will add to that. There's a lot of animals that eat their babies' poop when their babies are young because they don't want to give away the location of a baby. right?
Yes.
So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting leap. I don't know. I think that we have bred these animals to be extremely food motivated because that's how we've been able to train dogs, is through food motivation. So we now have this entire subspecies that is super food motivated, always looking for the nearest meal. And we also feed these animals things that potentially if don't look that different going in as going out. So if you think about it, I'm with the study here. Just clean up after your pet and keep them away from poop.
That's right. Just keep them away from it.
That's how to prevent poop eating.
Yeah, I'm fascinated that there was no correlation with diet in any way. I just wonder if there's more investigation that they could have done to determine whether or not these dogs have irritable bowel syndrome or something, where fresh poo is going to have more bacteria in it than another, and maybe that's some way to get to repopulate the microbial biota of the gut system. But
I do think I understand.
Take home message: keep your dogs away from it.
Yeah,
I think I do understand why they didn't pursue this study a whole lot further.
Dog poop. There's two things I think that.
This is getting to me.
I don't know, man. I mean, zookeepers spend 40 years picking up smelly poop. But yeah, testing the blood and their own poop for the microbial content. But the other thing that I think is interesting is they didn't look at the diet of the animal that pooped. So sometimes they were eating their own poop, but a lot of the time they were eating other dogs' poop. So I would say you'd have to take a known poop eater and put it in a lab and give it the option to pick a certain type of poop to eat.
A poop buffet.
And you'd have to, and my guess is that a dog on a raw meat diet, they would go for that poop first.
Yeah. Interesting.
But who knows? It's the next phase of the study. Justin, you want to volunteer for the lab work?
So science. Science. Sometimes I wonder about science and the questions
really
that are asked.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And actually and yeah, I would volunteer for that study. Absolutely. But the thing I was was interesting is though, I could sort of see it as being something that a pack animal would do almost in the reverse of like the mother deer eating the baby deer's poo to hide the scent. They also have to be concerned about giving away the fact that there's carnivores in the area.
Yeah.
So actually, the poop eating of the babies is mostly done by carnivores.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know that that deer do this though. That prey do this as well. So,
yeah, but it's a lot of it is bears and wolves and tigers, because if there are other individuals, especially if they're a solitary animal in the area, example polar bears, right? If a male polar bear, even if it is the father, is anywhere near a baby polar bear, they will eat it.
Wow. So yeah, good. There's probably is very good reason that these confused, inbred, unbred, outbred, overbred, hybrid hounds, hybrid animals are exhibiting a behavior that they no longer need, but it's somewhere in there. That drive is in there telling them this is what you do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it is time for us to take a break. Maybe you're going to go take a break. This is This Week in Science. Don't stay away too long because we do have more science coming after this. I've got stories about sexy monkeys and ape gestures. And I think, Justin, you've got some ancient smokers. Yeah. Well, there's that coming up in just a few. This is This Week in Science. Stay tuned. not no.
Can't explain things you've heard more than intuition. A lot of research shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to This Week in Science. Now is the time where we ask for your support because we do need your support to be able to keep this show going. You know, there are many ways that you can support this program. If you head over to twis.org, I'll tell you about them, right? I can show you all these wonderful ways over at twis.org. The first thing that you can do is subscribe. That's right. Subscribe to TWIS if you have not subscribed already. Please do so. We have iTunes, YouTube, and Google Play available for links for you to get easy access to subscribing to TWIS. So check that out if you haven't subscribed already. If you are interested in helping the monetary movement of This Week in Science, maybe head over to our Zazzle store. Click on that Zazzle store link in the header bar. That'll take you to where all of our TWIS merchandise is. We have neat t-shirts with the TWIS logo, some artwork from past Blair's Animal calendars, and we've got some really cool lumbar pillows, polo shirts, cell phone covers, wrapping paper, stamps, tote bags, all sorts of things. And a portion of the proceeds does go back to helping keep TWIS in the black, making sure that we are able to pay our bills and keep things going. So this is a win-win. You get an awesome TWIS item that you can wear and share your appreciation of TWIS publicly, and it helps us do what we want to do, going on and on and on. So if you're interested, though, in helping us out and helping us pay our bills, well, there are a couple of ways you can do that. The first is if you just scroll on down the main twis.org page, click on the yellow donate button. That will take you through a PayPal interface to be able to donate an amount of your choosing one time. But if you're interested in donating on an ongoing recurring basis, we have a couple of different options. You can click on any of the show episode pages, say the most recent one like last week where we interviewed Dr. Ryan Kobrick about his Mars simulation work. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, the show notes. At the end of the show notes, there are some pink buttons, and those pink buttons can allow you to donate using the PayPal interface on a recurring basis, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, recurring month after month, in an ongoing way to help us keep going. If you, though, you decide that you'd like to not use PayPal and try a different platform, we are on Patreon. And so if you head up to the main header bar, you can click on that Patreon link and it will take you to the patreon.com This Week in Science page where you can click on the big red button to become a patron. Choose your level of support and become a part of our community over on Patreon, where you will receive items and wonderful things for your support at various levels. That's right. If you are supporting us at $10 or more a month, you're going to get thanked on the show. At the end of the show, you hear those names at the end of the show. Those are people who are supporting us at the $10 or more per month level. And we thank you. We'll read your name out loud on the show. And you know, we do about 4 to 5 episodes every month. And so that averages out to about $2 an episode. It's not, if you were interested in maybe supporting us at that $2 level per episode, it's just $10 a month. It's really not that big a deal, but click on it, become a patron, help us out there, help us pay our bills and keep the show going. We would love to be making $2,000 a month over on Patreon. That would be a fabulous number to reach. And if you can help us do that, we'd love it if you would do that right now. If you are not so interested, not able to help us out financially, well, you know, the best thing that you can do is tell people to go to twis.org and to subscribe. That's right. Let people know that they can go to twist.org and subscribe to our podcast, and they can get twists every week delivered to their devices if they subscribe to us. And we would really love it if they did that, either on iTunes or YouTube or Facebook or Google. Just subscribe. And if you help us do that, it would be one of the biggest things that you can do. Tell people about twists. You know, you guys, there's so much that we do here every week, and it's just not the same without you. You are the people who keep this show going. We could not do this without you. Thank you for your support.
Can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A lot of research shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods are
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
Yes, we are. Justin, what you got?
I've got echolocation. Well, no, I don't have echolocation. It's
You wish you
bats
did.
that do that thing. Yeah. Utilizing sound to navigate in the dark of night, to track and capture insects in flight. And they are great at it. Known for it. Echolocation is a bat thing. It's not a thing that humans are known for. And yet some humans are known to utilize echolocation.
Mm-hmm.
How
The
many humans?
Batman. Yeah.
How many? What percentage of the population has this hidden skill is entirely unknown to science. But it is something some blind humans rely on to find their way about in a world without vision. So it is possible. These humans make sharp sounds with their mouths and listen for echoes. They can identify where a chair is in a room. They can identify when to duck to avoid bumping into a low-hanging door frame. But again, as the researchers note, very little is actually known about this skill in humans. To learn more, the team enlisted the assistance of 8 blind volunteers who had developed their echolocation skills to expert level. The experiments consisted of asking the volunteers to locate a plate affixed to a pole in an otherwise empty and soundproof room. Each of the volunteers was also fitted with microphones on them so they could record the sounds being produced by the subjects and the sounds that were also then being echoed back at them. For each run, a single volunteer, they had to hold their head steady when they were in this room, which is actually something that these experts usually move their heads around quite a bit when they're doing echolocation, but they asked them we're trying to isolate this thing, so just stay still in here and attempt to locate the plate. Researchers found that the subjects were best at locating the plate when it was directly in front of them. Out of the 8 volunteers, 8 of them found it every time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they placed it at 45-degree angles, 90-degree angles, so off to the sides as well. And they were all pretty good at finding it then as well. Then they took the plate and placed it behind them. Right? Now we got them. And the accuracy that was 80% within 135 degrees went down to, what would you think?
50%.
Wow, yeah, exactly right.
Oh,
Chance.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah. Same as flipping a coin.
I actually, foolishly assumed that they would not be able to find it behind them. I figured it was like a forward-facing echolocation thing, like you were sending out, and it's coming back at you, and your ears are picking it up, and it would be a directional thing, and because you were sending the sound wave forward, it would have to bounce back. They could find it behind them with 50% accuracy.
I mean, 50% accuracy. I mean, that's considered chance. So it's like you can argue that they're not actually that the echolocation is not actually helping them find it behind them.
But just that, well, it's not in front of me or to the side, so I'm going to stay behind me this time.
Right, exactly. That some people are just like, it's like, yeah, all right, that's behind me. I got it right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
wasn't anywhere else. Like, you couldn't trick me that way. Putting it behind me. Researchers also found that volunteers varied both in the volume and rates of clicks that they made when attempting to locate something. Also very interesting. Because they had these microphones picking up sounds. These microphones were picking up sounds outside of human hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the volunteers could hear echoes that were softer than sound experts have previously indicated were possible for humans to hear.
That's
What?
awesome.
Yeah, which suggests that their
That's
brains have adapted to a new form of sensory input that most of us don't have access to. That is
Or
fascinating.
there's a change in the sensitivity to, that maybe because we, we do use our hearing and we have pretty decent hearing, but it's not our main sense. And once you lose your eyesight and hearing is much more relied upon, that potentially there's a reallocation of resources through plasticity processes within the brain to increase the sensitivity of neurons to stimulation. So if the hair cells are triggered,
I think that's
at
a long
all,
way. Yeah, I think that's a long way of saying what they said.
Yeah.
In this way, that the brains have adapted to this, right? So it's sort of like we've talked before about how vision adapts to like kids who play first-person games, right? Games where they have to look all around the screen, their grayscale vision becomes better. It's nothing to do with like flexing the eye muscles as you move your orbitals around. It's the brain becoming more acute in how it detects things. So it's you're right. You're in agreement with the researchers that they think that's what might be going on. That the brain is picking up signals that we might not even really normally consciously be able to hear because our brain doesn't have any pathway that's even the least bit concerned with tracking noise at that kind of a
Exactly.
sound.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that we don't have the right machinery for it.
Yep.
In terms of ears and the hairs and the things and the tiny eardrums. But their brain just doesn't care. It's not interested.
Yeah. Well, it's like, we have our eye and everyone's like, oh, the eye's so amazing. It's like, no, the human eye actually is not all that amazing. It's the visual cortex of the brain that's amazing. The visual system of the brain is what makes our vision the way that it is. And without the brain, it would be a very simple image. It would be not a great image at all. And so the brain is what processes and allows us to have it. And so we might have all those sensory hair cells enough to be able to pick up other sounds, but since we don't have to rely on, we don't need to hear those little sounds. The brain says, meh, I got to do other things until it's needed. That's cool. I want them to go and study that now. I hope they're going to go study that now that we know that these people are echolocating.
Yeah, what's going on in their brain?
What is actually happening? And can you track the changes in plasticity from the loss of sight or the beginning of training in echolocation? Can you track the changes in the brain over time? That would be pretty cool. Probably not something people would volunteer for immediately, but I don't know, maybe echolocation training.
That'd be a pretty cool thing to have in your tool belt of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Try to think of when I'd use it. Maybe too lazy. The light switches on the other side of the room. I just want to walk over here. Like I don't know that it would come up that often.
You know what I have in tool belt right now?
What?
This weekend, what has science done for me lately? This letter is from Jordan Uhl. Hello. I just started listening to your show and I love it. And you know what, Justin? Jordan's going to be very happy with your short disclaimer from this week.
Okay, good.
Yeah. He says, what has science done for me lately? Well, it allows my daughter to progress in her lack of muscle and neurological growth. My daughter, who is now 3, suffers from hypothyroidism and is since age 1 when we were shocked to find out her diagnosis. After several years of therapy and regular oral thyroid doses, I'm proud to say she can now speak a little over 10 words clearly and is able to get around the house by scooting her butt across the floor. The cutest thing you will ever see. So, in conclusion, my daughter would not be where she is today without the help of modern medicine and physical therapy. She's my sweet little angel, and I only wish the best for her. P.S. Here's hoping she's able to walk independently by the age of 5. Thanks again for an awesome show. Keep up the good work. Thank you for sharing, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan. Best of luck.
I share that hope that she's able to walk independently and do much more by the age of 5 and onward into her life. It's amazing that, for something like hypothyroidism, where it's a known factor and you can, science says it allows us to give thyroid doses so that can be overcome. And I hope that science and medicine are really able to help her in her life, help your whole family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Remember, everyone out there, we need you to write in and let us know what science has done for you lately. What has it done? What does it do for you every day? Tell us. Leave us a message on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thisweekinscience, or you can send me an email directly at Kirsten, Kirsten, at thisweekinscience.com. Come on, send me a letter. Send us a message on Facebook. I want to hear your stories. We want to keep this going for as long as possible. Let's do it. But you know what we're going to talk about right now?
What?
A little marketing. I'm going to talk about a little bit of marketing. There was a story several years ago about some researchers who wanted to find out whether primates respond to marketing the way that humans do. And they talked about, and we talked about it on the show, they talked about the fact that they were going to do this test, that they were going to study whether or not involving sex with branding would lead to a higher interest, whether sex sells to primates. And it's been, I think, almost 10 years since or I don't know, maybe it took 5 years, but it's been a long time. I actually went back looking in the literature to see within the last year or two to see whether or not they had published anything, and they hadn't. But now, in 2018, researchers have published in PLOS One, which is an open journal, so anyone can read this article, rhesus macaques form preferences for brand logos through sex and social status-based advertising. In their advertisements, their sexy study with rhesus macaques, these researchers from Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, University of Colorado Boulder's Institute of Cognitive Science, and Duke University's Fuqua School of Business and University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, they had a bunch of rhesus macaques that they showed various branding images to. They tested whether social status affected the branding messages that were shared, or whether pictures of dominant monkeys within their social group were linked to particular brands, whether subordinate monkeys were important to branding and to these individuals, or whether the buttocks were important. And they had a female rhesus macaque showing her rear end, turning around and looking over its shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Just, your old, ooh.
Come hither look.
Come hither, rhesus macaque, come hither look, or whatever that is. Yes, and so they associated these various brands with these different concepts: dominance, subordinance, or sex.
Mhm.
And what they found, what's really interesting, is that of course, to most macaques, male and female, the image of the sexy macaque was the preferred
Sexy
branding
macaque.
image. The sexy rear end macaque
Yikes.
affected which logos the monkeys preferred. So females and males chose that one on a regular basis. Dominant male monkeys were also very persuasive, but something that was unexpected was how persuasive to males the subordinate imagery was.
Because they don't want to fight with another dominant male. They want subordinates around.
Yeah, so it's interesting that the females had absolutely no interest, no preference whatsoever for the subordinate male branding, but the males did.
Mm-hmm.
And to a more extreme extent than to other imagery involving dominant males.
Yeah, they don't want competition. None of that.
Yeah, so the researchers are wondering whether it does have to do still something with, like you're saying, this dominance hierarchy, whether that's exactly what it has to do with, or whether it is something that the monkeys that were chosen were from within their social group. So they were known monkeys.
Oh, so it's their buddies.
It's their buddies. But, and so maybe it has something more to do with being aware of the specific social hierarchies within the group that they are existing in.
So you could almost link that to endorsement in advertisement speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your friend likes this thing, so you should like it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. My friend, my buddy likes this brand. Yeah,
my buddy likes Bud Light Lime, so darn if I'm gonna get some.
Yeah, so these brands, which mean absolutely nothing to the monkeys, they got whatever they chose, the monkeys still got a reward. So there was no cost to choosing anything, and the brands themselves mean absolutely nothing. They have these primates don't care whether or not it's Adidas or Nike, or whether it's McDonald's or Burger King, or, what particular brand it is. There's no previous experience. There's no hamburgers or shoes associated with it. They're just getting a nice sweet treat regardless of what they choose. But so what this shows us is that these totally abstract images to these monkeys can become important when salient cues of social hierarchy and sexual availability become attached to them. And so what it suggests is that this is something that advertising, we've known this really, but this is the first test of this marketing strategy on another primate species. And so it shows that this goes very deep, that sex and social status goes way back in our evolutionary history, and that's what marketing is tying into. This isn't just a human thing. This is a primate thing. This could even be other animals in the,
Yeah, totally. So I was going to save a story for my quick stories, but it's actually very related to this. Do you mind if I jump in?
Jump in?
Real quick. Before you do, how do we know that this isn't just associating a symbol to these? I mean,
that is what it is.
That's all it is.
But I know, but how is this not a word for this? And do you like this word? Do you like this concept versus,
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because they're not buying anything. I mean, I think I'd be more impressed if we, not gave these monkeys credit cards and let them go on Amazon, but you start selecting.
Right.
But if they had a physical product that meant nothing to them, like a shoe, right? And the shoe got associated with sex, and so you put the shoe in the cage, and then they're sort of like, no, I'm going to be the one holding the shoe because I want to represent the dominant or the sex or whatever it is.
Right.
Like I think I would need that next step for something that they don't actually have any practical use for, and then want to covet this object in some way or stand on it or however it was. Because otherwise, I don't know that they just didn't say, here's the word for sex. We're going to create a symbol, a representation for it, and teach them, which would be a great experiment. It has a completely different meaning, but might be what they have done. Here's a symbol for sex. Do you like that? I like that symbol. Yeah, I'm all about that. Right? I would argue that's the marketing thing.
That's what advertising is trying to do at the human level, though. It's a very similar process where you're saying, for example, if you drink this beer, you will get sex. So that is just it's not that far off.
It's not that far removed. I mean, and what you're talking about is the transfer of the salient value of the cue to the holder. And no, they haven't done that in this study. But what they have shown is that there are conditioned preferences that occur in relation to social cues these preferences can be totally abstract. The things that are preferred can be totally abstract. An object that means absolutely nothing, but because it's been linked with a sexy female, it suddenly is preferred and important. And that's all it's showing.
If it's an object, but they didn't do an object. They just
did an image. They did the symbol, but the monkeys were choosing one symbol over the other.
Right, and I think part of that is just the initial language to me. That part is not quite at the marketing where you're getting something that you might be totally useless or arbitrary. This stick versus that stick. I want this stick because I saw this stick associated with the dominant monkey in the picture, and now I want to hold it. That to me is what marketing is. You want to grab a useless object that makes you feel like you're participating in a thing.
But that'll never work if you don't have the initial preference creation in the first place.
I don't think they're creating the preference for dominant monkeys.
No, they're not.
They're just illustrating.
No, they're not. They're not creating the preference for the dominant monkey. They're using that preference for a dominant monkey, linking it to an abstract symbol, and then the abstract symbol then becomes preferred. Yeah. A female is going to prefer the symbol that was linked to the dominant male over the symbol that was linked to a subordinate male. That's what the female is going to prefer. And they've showed that that's what happens.
I think if it was not a symbol, but just the word, right? If we just really had the word,
it could have been anything.
Then it might just be like, have we taught them a word that's anyway. I want them to do the next one where they put a tennis shoe in the middle of the thing or a stick that looks funky, and then run it again where you see some sort of wanting to have this, putting the shoe on the head and being like, I look good, don't I? That's what dominant monkeys do. They put the shoe on their head, right? Something like that would be more illustrative of marketing to me.
Well, the next step of marketing. Yeah. So we'll see. It took them several years to get these results out. So if they do go that
the first 9 years actually trying to get a monkey a credit card. I think that's
probably that was the problem. That's the problem.
You can't do it even for research. That's not okay. We'll try to do it.
Oh my goodness. So Blair, what was your story?
Well, speaking of sexual preference, have you heard of proboscis monkeys? What is a proboscis, Justin? Do you know?
No. What's a proboscis?
Nose.
It's your nose. Proboscis. And proboscis monkeys have a huge nose.
It is huge.
I'm going to show you
huge nose.
A picture for fun. There's a proboscis monkey. Why the heck do they have them? What would your guess be?
Adorable. It's just adorable. So my guess is they live somewhere where they have to heat the air before they breathe it in.
Okay, good guess. No. Kiki?
I have already read this story.
Oh, darn.
I know the answer.
Well, it It's sexual selection yet again. The females love the big nose. You know what they say about guys with a big nose? Well, scientists from Cardiff University, the Danao-Girang Field Center, Kyoto University, and Saba Wildlife Department found a link between nose size of proboscis monkeys and the number of females in their harems. So at the very base level, bigger nose, more ladies. They found both male-male competition and female choice were factors in the evolution of large male noses, and that nasal enlargement modified the resonance properties of male vocalization. So this is one element, is that the nose allowed them to make louder, more proboscis monkey-y sounds, which helps them win dominance. But also, based on the collected data, they found correlations between body mass, facial characteristics, testicular volume, vocalizations, and number of harem females in captive and free-ranging proboscis monkeys with nose size. So the ones that are very interesting there, aside from the whole sound thing and the number of ladies, is the body mass and the testicular volume. That is a big deal in primate species that fight for dominance of a harem. Testicular volume is like the number one, because they have to be able to father babies from a harem. So they
need to be able to make lots of sperm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good indicator of volume, which is a huge it's a huge way of females selecting males as well.
And I bet those males also just have a higher testosterone level generally.
Probably. Yeah, that would help with all of that. So
or maybe they were in an environment in the womb in which they had higher testosterone levels.
Yeah, so those big noses, we now know why they exist. They're a cue for testicular volume. There we go.
Or hey, I'm a good mate.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting correlation. You know what they say about proboscis monkeys with big noses? There you go.
Now we do.
We do. I have one last monkey primate.
Ooh, fun.
But not monkey. It's an ape story. One last ape story now that we're on this primate tip.
Yeah.
Study published again in the PLOS journals, PLOS Biology. Researchers studied the gestures of bonobos and chimpanzees to see whether they speak the same body language. And in looking at the bonobo gestural repertoire, they found that it overlaps with that of the chimpanzee by about 90%. But even though the gestures might be the same, that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. So they determined the meanings of the bonobo gestures, like a little hand swish of an adult at the youngsters is something that you might also recognize as a get out of here, kid kind of gesture. So there were gestures that they could determine a singular meaning for. They found half of the gestures of bonobos do have these singular meanings. The other half are more ambiguous. But all but one gesture type have distinct meanings. So there's a different distribution of intended meanings to the average distribution for all gesture types. Anyway, they applied this analysis method to be able to determine the meanings of the gestures of bonobos and whether they overlap with the meanings of the gestures of chimpanzees. And they determined that the similarity of these two species is greater than what would be expected by chance. And so if bonobos and chimpanzees were in the same place, they could potentially understand each other.
Whoa.
Although there are maybe enough dissimilar gestures that they might have some disagreements.
Yeah. You said, what about my mother?
Exactly. Yeah, so we don't really they need to look into this much more, but this in one sense is an interesting study because it gets at this underlying meaning of gestures that we may even share with our ape cousins. And so there is a study underway currently to have humans determine the meaning of, to look at videos of apes doing particular gestures and determining what they mean. And they're going to try and see how often humans know what chimpanzees mean when they make particular gestures.
That's fun. Can I volunteer for that study?
Doesn't that sound cool?
I want to do that.
Yeah. So I think the really interesting thing here is how far back does body language communication in primates go, and what are the basic communiques that have lasted throughout time? What has stayed culturally relevant regardless of changes in culture? So, really interesting.
What's that preserved body language through time?
Yeah. Like we smile, but our smiles are not threatening or fear usually. I mean, if I see somebody going at me, that's not a smile. That's scary. And for those of you listening right now, I was just baring my teeth as if I were growling.
Yeah, but chimp smiles definitely do look stereotypically like a happy human smile, and they are not.
That's not what they mean.
No.
Yes. So there are things that we do that just have different meanings. And so that's the interesting thing. What's different? What's the same? What's been conserved across evolutionary time? And the idea that bonobos and chimpanzees have a lot of similarities is just an interesting point in that investigation. Justin,
go.
You got some ancient smokers?
Oh yeah, this is kind of it. This is more like a thing it's gonna be a thing more than this is a thing, but using nothing but ordinary dental picks, Yelmer Erkins, an anthropologist at the University of California in Davis, and his team extracted dental plaque from the ancient teeth of 8 individuals buried between 6,000 or as recent as 300 years ago. They sent this dental plaque to Washington State University for analysis, and the researchers there used liquid chromatography mass spectrometry to test the samples for nicotine and other plant-based drugs like caffeine, atropine, muscle relaxant there. Teeth were provided with the help from members of the Ohlone tribe in San Francisco. So they were actually able to, out of the specimens that they got, identify a couple of smokers who had nicotine. One was a grandmother of age, they think. They've been trying to sort of trace the tobacco use in the Americas, but they rely on finding basically paraphernalia. You have to find a pipe that was left behind. And it also doesn't give them very much information about who was smoking said pipe or what have you, right? So this is coming directly from an individual. You've got a skeleton. You can date the age of the individual when they died, and you can now find out what they were smoking. Now, they could also use this for other compounds, trace elements that are in there that they could do stuff with. So it sounds pretty simple. Like, you took a guess over the counter. I don't know where you get dental plaque spiky things that you can scrape on teeth with, but pretty simple technique, a little bit new technology and the idea to do it. This could get used throughout all of the, we were talking last week about all these ancient humans that they've been discovering and all this DNA they're getting out of it. Let's find out what they were smoking while we're at it, right?
I think it's really, also very interesting who were the individuals who were smoking, because maybe, we know that there was smoking for ceremonial purposes. And so, were people who were members of the society who were more the medicine men, the carriers of the pipes, are they going to have higher concentrations of nicotine than other individuals within a tribe or a group of people? and how would that work? So I think this would be interesting to tell us about social structures.
Yeah.
Social structures through nicotine.
Well, it was 2 out of the 8 individuals
Yeah.
that they got this hit on. But they're thinking of broadening it, looking for other things that could reside there in the teeth. And it's just another window that we've got by using a technique like this to look throughout the ancients and to answer a lot more of those questions, not just about who smoked or what age that were, what all that kind of, but all sorts of things about diet, about the environment, about everything else, using a really simple technique like this.
Scientists of the future are going to hate us. So many people bleaching their teeth and I don't know, getting their teeth filed down and putting on veneers. And, there's all sorts of people in the future are going to be like, what? We can't get anything off these teeth.
No, but we have an archive. We put everything on hard drives. We recorded absolutely everything we did. We took selfie pictures. It's like, you're using non-quantum computing back then. Yeah. Can't interface, bud. That's
I don't have that dongle.
I saw for the first time a laser optic hard disk. We cleared out the lab to do some remodeling stuff. And it's this, like the hard disk, not the floppy, but the hard disks that we had for a long time that you put in. It was exactly like that, but it was huge. It was like a giant, oversized, floppy disk inside a hot. It was the most ridiculous looking thing. But sometime in the last 20 years, that was cutting edge data storage technique. You would take all of your files, it was probably megabytes, on this giant disk and put it into a giant. Yeah, the future people won't be able. Everything that we're doing is going to be lost to technology outmoding.
Yeah, I when I was moving, I moved my external hard drive. That is probably, you could probably carry everything on there on a little
flash stick. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well, even though some of our as technology moves on, it does allow us to make really cool discoveries. My last story for the evening is a study related to the Milky Way galaxy.
Oh, that's where I live.
Yeah, it's home sweet home. Researchers, though, like to navel gaze. They want to be able to pick some lint out of our galactic belly button, i.e., that big black hole at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A. It's thought to be about 4 million times more massive than the sun, but we can't see it. Number one, it's a black hole, but there's all sorts of radiation and other stuff coming off of the black hole, right? It's like there's probably a huge quasar going on and radiation stuff spewing out light, everything everywhere. We can't see it. It's like it's trying to look at the sun on a cloudy day because there is so much dust and gas between us and the Milky Way black hole. We can't see it. But now we can.
What?
Dun, dun, dun.
That was quick.
Yeah, well, kind
Thank
of.
you, science.
Yeah, thank you, science. We're not looking directly at the light. What we're looking at is infrared light. And this cool method that researchers have come up with to look at the magnetic field lines that are created by the energetic movements of the spinning of the black hole at the center of our galaxy. They think that it's spinning so fast that as it's going around, it's sucking stuff into it and it's whipping. They think this black hole is just whipping the solar systems and the stars, things that are close to its center, just whipping it around really fast, like having a big spoon and mixing up a bowl really fast. You put your mixer on high, that's what's going on at the center right near the black hole. But we can't see that. That's what we think is going on. We think it slows down out where we are, but it's going really fast toward the center. And so looking toward the center, they were able to actually see the magnetic field lines that could potentially be doing this by using the Canary Cam infrared camera on the Gran Telescopio Canaris. It's located on the island of La Palma, Spain. So infrared light, it doesn't get blocked by the dust and the gas, and it passes right on through. And we are also able to look at the polarization of that light, how it gets spun by the magnetic fields. And so they've been able to look at the differences in the spin, the polarization of light coming from different places along the edge of this black hole region toward the center of the Milky Way galaxy, to be able to get kind of the magnetic ley lines and see the direction and the speed at which things are moving. So the researchers say we are now able to watch material race around a black hole 25,000 light years away, and for the first time see magnetic fields that are there in detail.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, pretty cool. Technology advances, and then we get to get a closer look.
More things.
We need to see more things and figure more things out. That's right. All right. Anyone else have a last story?
I have a quick one from University of Pennsylvania looking at human evolution. No, not the past. Looking towards the future. Humans are, of course, still evolving, currently evolving. What changes are we currently undergoing? In this new paper, they analyzed data from the 1000 Genomes Project, looking for emerging gene variants, and they found 5 genetic hotspots where they are seeing population groups that have evolutionary changes underway in our current DNA as a species. And they found resistance to malaria growing in African populations. They found an interesting amino acid change in Europeans. They found 2 sections of DNA left over from interbreeding with Neanderthals. And they found an ADH variant. ADH is a gene responsible for inducing production of alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an enzyme that breaks down alcohol into acetaldehyde, which is then converted to acetate after that. So they found that this variant, just so happens, protects against alcoholism. So they're not sure why or how. Their theory, I love this, is that it might break down alcohol faster, which causes drinkers to feel sick almost immediately when they start drinking, which would definitely stop you from drinking too much. They also theorize that it's possible that over the past 1,000 years or so, particularly for people in reproductive years who maybe do a lot of binge drinking and who may develop symptoms of alcoholism. Remember how evolution works. The whole idea of natural selection is that deleterious mutations don't make it to reproduction. So this theory is that the people who drank a lot ended up killing themselves before reproducing. So they died before they had a chance to make babies, and alcoholism is slowly being weeded out of our line.
Yeah, I guess that wouldn't make sense. Yeah, I would say that maybe, they just felt too sick to reproduce.
Yeah. I can't. I feel so.
Yeah,
terrible.
I mean, they don't have to die from alcoholism. They just have to not reproduce. So
yeah. So overall, in the project, they found this emerging ADH variant, but they were not as prevalent. This is their big asterisk on this in European and American populations as they were in others. They think they were actually overlooking markers, since markers in populations are different. So that's their theory. But overall, this ADH variant is coming out. You could also potentially raise correlations between European and American populations and ways that, I don't know, something with the social structure where alcoholism persists despite these things. There's other factors for sure in this. But
but where is it? Who else drinks that much? Is this a Russian
everywhere? Everybody drinks. There's alcohol. I mean,
in every culture around the world.
Yeah, from studying past cultures, human ancestors, that alcohol showed up and it's been around. It's part of a lot of cultural tradition.
I feel like it's a predominant, maybe only the Russians and the Scots might have us a little bit, but if America is a heavy drink. I thought this was going to be like,
I think you're thinking
alcoholism's going
about.
away. People are just accustomed to drinking beer instead of water.
I think
No.
that's part of it. Is you're thinking about drinking, not alcoholism, and so
Right.
we may have this beer a day culture, and we may have this front of mind alcohol stuff going on, but there's alcohol everywhere. And like I said, it's part of cultural traditions. It's part of these things where you go to any continent, you will find some liquor.
Okay, so for thousands of years, humanity's been drinking.
Yeah.
And the alcoholism itself is being rooted out, you think, or this study thinks, because most people just either aren't going to make it in a society of drinkers.
Well, if you have alcoholism, you're not going to make it to reproductive age.
Yeah, but they still think that it's still unclear. We don't know.
So that's one theory.
Happens. Yes.
The other theory was this idea that this variant makes you feel ill before you drink too much.
Which we do know that alcohol dehydrogenase, that there are some individuals, many people from Asian cultures have different levels of alcohol dehydrogenase and will get pink faces. There are flushing effects and also behavioral effects that occur more quickly than with other people, and it's a genetic issue. It's genetic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is why if alcoholism runs in your family, you're more prone to have that disease.
Yeah. That's
so
interesting.
Yeah.
But who knows? Yeah, maybe if it would be nice to not have alcoholism.
Yeah.
Eventually be
Get
around.
out of here, alcoholism. Nobody wants you here.
Everything in moderation forever.
Yeah, so, nobody invited you to this party.
Come
Get
on,
out.
evolution, help us out.
There we go.
And there we go. We have gotten to the end of the show.
We did it.
Are you serious? Is that it?
We did it. It is the end of the show. It is time for us to say goodbye, to say thank you to everyone out there. Thank you to all of you in our chat rooms. Thank you for watching right now. If you are currently watching, thank you to people who help make the show happen, to Fada, to Identity 4, to Brandon. Thank you for all of your help every week and making this show possible. I would also like to thank our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to, let's see, where am I going? Thank you to EO, Byron Lee, Kevin Parachan, Mark Hessenflow, Matt Sutter, Ken Hayes, Aaron Luthen, Flying Out, Christopher Rappin, Brendan Minish, Greg Briggs, Robert Gary S., Marjorie, Rudy Garcia, Robert Aston, Kurt Larson, Steve Lesseman, Ben Rothig, Sean Lamb, Greg Riley, Jim DePoe, Lisa Slazewski, Christopher Dreyer, Brian Carrington, Jason Olds, John McKee, Paul, Sean Bryant, Rick Ramus, Artyom, Rich Porter, Brian Condren, Richard, Eric Knapp, Kyle Washington, Time Jumper 319, Bob Calder, Bill Kersey, Jason Roberts, Matthew Litwin, Mark Mazzaros, John Ratnaswamy, Craig Landon, Jacqueline Boyster, Ed Dyer, Tony Steele, Alex Wilson, Steve DeBell, Andy Groh, Joshua Fury, Charlene Henry, Richard Onomus, G. Burton Lattimore, and Paul Disney. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if any of you are interested in finding out more about Patreon, you can find more information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience, or just go to twis.org and click on the Patreon link. Remember that you can also help us out by telling your friends about TWIS. That's right. That would really be a big help. On next week's show, we will be interviewing Michael Schermer on his new book, Heavens on Earth, which is the scientific search for the afterlife, immortality, and utopia.
Oh, so, I didn't know they found those things.
That's right.
Find out more about them.
Blair, you might be able to find out about uploading your brain talking to me.
Yes.
Yes, we might get answers for you. Anyway, we will be broadcasting live online next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time on twist.org/live. You can watch and join our chat room, but don't worry if you can't make it. You can find our past episodes at twist.org/YouTube, facebook.com/thisweekinscience, or twist.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device, you can look up TWIS, the number 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twist.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in your subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr.Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world, so I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice, show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand, and all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way, so everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way, so everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And now it is the after show. Yes, TWIS is on Stitcher also, Feta. Yes, I believe it is. Stitcher, Spreaker, Tune In, all the places. Let's see. It's 10 o'clock. 10:08.
Yeah, I gotta unpack enough to find the things that I have to pack to get on a plane tomorrow morning.
Yeah. So Blair's on her way to Portland tomorrow for the Science Talk, Science Communication Conference that I've been involved in helping to plan. Fingers crossed that everything goes well. The conference starts tomorrow. I have to get up early in the morning to get there before registration opens. So I need to actually just get my things together and go to bed so that I can get there on time in the morning. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so it's going to be for me and for Blair 2 days of science communications fun, which is going to be great. Yeah, those of you out there who what time do you go back home Friday? After 5?
I think my flight's at 7, so
Okay.
I'm probably gonna have to leave right at 5.
Okay, so you'll see Phil's keynote maybe, which will be good.
Yeah.
But Phil Plait, the bat astronomer, is going to have a keynote on Friday afternoon, and which I'm looking forward to. It'd be great to see him. And who else do we have? We've lost one of our keynotes to the flu, which is unfortunate.
No.
But Carrie
You want me to get up there and talk about invertebrate sex for an hour?
That's what you do. You just get right on. We've got an extra hour. You just get right on in there, talk about invertebrate sex. It's gonna be all great. Yeah. Yeah. Do I know if any flat earthers or climate deniers plan to picket the event? No, Strengths. They have not told me that they're going to be coming. I don't think it's that big of an event. I hope it's not. Yes.
I don't feel like that. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but we've been to enough science-y conferences at this point. I haven't really seen that.
Not yet. No, we haven't seen that kind of thing. But I'm excited. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Fada asks if there's time for a Portland get-together. No. And this is unfortunate, but it's going to be Blair's doing a quick trip tomorrow. We're at the conference until 7.
7, 8? Yeah.
7 or 8. And then it'll be eat food, go to sleep, repeat.
Yes. Yeah. And then I'm getting on a plane.
And then you get on a plane and go right back to San Francisco right away. So there's no time for the fun times.
No, I've never been to Portland. And after this trip, I still won't have been to Portland.
No, you will not have really seen Portland. No, you'll have seen the Oregon Convention Center, which I don't really think is a good representative of.
I feel like not.
Fine, but it's not the best representation of Portland.
How easy is the public transportation from the airport to the
easy.
Center? Great, I'm doing that.
So easy.
Follow the signs.
You get on a red line, and it's easy.
Great, I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. You follow the signs from the airport. You get on a red Max line. It's the overground train, and the train will take you. Basically, you go to your stop, which is like a block or two away from the convention center. It's like right at the convention center, I think. Yeah, it's easy. I have faith in you. You've navigated New York City.
I've navigated Israel on public transit.
Israel, that's right.
So I'll be fine.
That's right. Oh yeah, Bleak. I forgot. We're gonna rave. That's right.
I'll bring my things.
Oh yeah, Beej. Oh my goodness. Lawrence Krauss. No, he wasn't invited in the first place. It is unfortunate when big names in science communications, big popularizers of science, are seen to not be as upstanding as you hoped they were. Did you see that, Blair? Lawrence Krauss has been, he's a sexual harasser, according to stories. Yeah, I think I haven't read the stories. I saw the headlines and I went, can't even. Not even.
So part of that, you have to understand who his mentor and idol is. It's Feynman.
Feynman,
sorry. Feynman, who was like
a philanderer.
No, he was not a philanderer. He would have been the second person outed in the Me Too movement. Okay. Had he been around for it. So, not off the map in terms of that, I think. Unfortunately, I don't want to jump to judgment, but I do, because I think this is where we're in a point where we need to be jumping to judgment for a time period. We need to allow jumps to judgment for this period, and people can go, oh, it's not fair. It's like, okay, we've had how many years of it being unfair in the other direction?
Yeah.
If we do a little jump to judgments for the immediate time being and let this take place, there'll be a healing that can happen later. There's going to be people whose awareness will be raised, regardless if there were a few innocent victims who did get caught up in the storm. There's been a lot of victims who were never, whose suffering we never heard by the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, millions, really. I mean, it's a bigger number than we could possibly really even deal with. So if that's a jump to judgment, it's in the big balance of things, pendulum swinging, it's going to be fine.
Well, remember just a couple of years ago, we had that article or that study come out about women in labs and how, oh no, it wasn't a study. It was some jerk said, I don't like having women in labs because they're distracting or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it's from that, and then these studies that we have read on the show about how women can't be smart and funny or smart and beautiful, and then like other studies where, it's just all of these things that women are, when you replace a woman's name with a man's name, they're treated differently and all this. So it was only a matter of time until the accusations on men in academia started happening, unfortunately, because with stuff like that, it's got to be happening. It's happening everywhere.
It's an institutional thing. I kind of had a Me Too moment, I guess, once upon a time with a researcher in England. And I was a young science, I was like 20.
That's when they get you, when you're young.
I was young, 21, 22, and I was in Europe, traveling, getting to present my research at a conference. It was also exciting. And he was a colleague of my professors. And so we were introduced, and he was like, oh, let me take you out. I'll show you. We were in, where were we? I think we were in Berlin or something like that. But he was like, let me take you out to dinner, and I want to show you some things. And I was like, wow, okay, awesome. That sounds great. And I thought we'd talk about research.
Yeah. Nope.
I was like,
slapping your hand away is what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah. And then, at the end of the night, he invited me up to his hotel room, and I was like, this is definitely not what I signed up for this evening.
It's like your stomach falls out, right?
Yeah,
you think that somebody wanted to talk to you about because of your beautiful brain, and then all of a sudden you're like,
exactly. Oh. And it turns, he was married, and I was just like, what? And it turns out this researcher was, he was very well known for this kind of behavior. But I didn't know that, and I didn't know that I should be on the lookout for that. And I was, you're a little starstruck as well. It's like, here's this big name researcher who's he wants to talk to me. Oh my gosh. This is wow, cool. And yes, I was naive, but I was also young. So, I'm older, I'm jaded now.
But also I think there's something to be said that you, for whatever reason, be it previous experiences that you had, maybe it had something to do with your upbringing or your friend group or whatever, but you had the wherewithal to go, nah. And how many other people felt pressured because there was this indication that they would be able to be associated with something, or that they would get to have this, some sort of benefit from this relationship, that they suddenly find themselves, or if they feel pressured in some way based on something else, if they got too drunk out on the town or whatever it is. So, you were fortunate enough to be able to go, ew, no thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the best thing, it's like, fast forward a couple of years and I'm back in Europe, in England, and my professor has invited me again to a casual lunch engagement with this professor and his wife. I'm like sitting across a picnic table.
Yay.
It's like, huh.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Not super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the world that we have lived in, and now people at least are starting to get it, which is nice. I mean, that's the nice thing about it, is that it wasn't talked about. And so also, like, for every one of those weird things that have happened to me, in the moment, you feel singled out. You feel like the only one. You feel like you can't talk to other people about it because it's somehow you feel bad.
Yeah.
Like, did I lead him on? Did I not make my intentions for this hangout clear? I did something wrong. I'm a bad person. But now knowing that I'm weirdly excited about the next generation of women feeling more empowered to say no, having more understanding of the community of women that is around them, and hopefully having less of these things happen.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be a better understanding and more of that community, Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I already see ladies being better at having each other's back, and men being better at having ladies' backs already.
Although there is also a case to be made for people who did sleep their way to the top because that's their particular skill set. Like, be they male or female. Be they male or female. Like, there's also, like, some people have got to be on the sidelines of this going, like, but that's what I was good at.
Well,
this is
Justin,
one of my strengths in communicating with people.
That's consensual.
Yeah. No,
there's a difference. And there's also a difference between saying okay because you feel pressured.
An employer or influential person in a whatever field who will sleep with them for fear of reprisal. But that's a much later conversation. That's the why not me too conversation. That's
why not me too?
Oh boy.
So I found the story I was referencing earlier, and it was from actually University of California, Davis. It's a psychologist at University of California, Davis. It says Neanderthals had large brains and made complex tools, but never demonstrated the ability to draw recognizable images, unlike early modern humans who created vivid renderings of animals and other figures on rock and cave walls. That artistic gap may be due to differences in the way they hunted. Says goes on to say, where's my favorite line in this whole thing? He says, hand-eye coordination involved in both hunting with throwing spears and drawing representational art could be one factor explaining why modern humans became smarter than Neanderthals. Well, and he has this new theory of evolution that has to do with art and mankind's
intelligence and superiority. Well, I guess you can shelf that one, can't you now? Huh. Never underestimate Neanderthals. They will always surprise you. Oh, but this is the study I think I was also talking about, but Blair's gone. He'd also done work that showed that that zebras stay just outside the effective range of poisoned arrows that were used by African hunters for 24,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know how far you can shoot. I'm just going to stay right over here. You move toward me, I move away.
Neanderthals could mentally visualize previously seen animals from working memory, but they were unable to translate those mental images effectively into the coordinated hand movement patterns required for drawing. Yeah. And it's funny too, because I was looking for images of some of these cave paintings, and I found all these gorgeous cave renderings. It's just awesome stuff. But and a lot of them are book covers that they were showing, like you can read this book about cave art and everything. Like you throw them all out. I mean, at least the parts where they're not just showing you pictures, but they're trying to explain who might have done them. It takes a little development in a technology that's able to date residue, and
it's not a throw it all out moment. It's a now you need a reprint moment.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah. Some of these are books that mostly are representations.
Science builds on itself. It's not like this is garbage now.
No. But I think these are hard copy books. It's a different sort of thing. I think that yes, the body of science is always continually adding to and tearing down and building up and finding over. Yes, but somebody wrote a book. It's like a coffee table book that they're now staring at after hearing this story or reading about this story. They're like, yeah, I guess either rewrite it or just not bother. Doesn't.
Right. So, I mean, I've got a lot of science books on my shelves that are a little out of date. It doesn't mean everything's wrong in them, though. No. There are some things that are just a little out of date.
But just for reference, this new theory of evolution based on art and man's becoming smarter than Neanderthal, which I don't know where he got that. I don't think that's illustrated anywhere else.
No.
But this whole paper he published was on the 8th of this month.
On the 8th.
Timing.
Yeah.
Timing was all wrong.
I thought there was a whole conversation about the prefrontal being a different shape in the Neanderthal versus the human ancestor. And so the implication was that there were elements of their intelligence that our ancestors had that the Neanderthals didn't.
Yeah, so we have rounder skulls and bigger parietal cortexes region of the brain that integrates visual imagery and motor coordination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, smarter. There you go.
But they had a bigger brain. Like they could have fit it all in there.
Yeah, but science and everything. We talked about this so many times. If you're comparing species, brain size means nothing. Within a species, brain size means something. But if you're taking a mouse and a rat, brain size don't mean nothing. Even though they are very, very similar, probably closer than Neanderthals and the human ancestors. But still, brain size does not matter.
I don't know much.
I would argue that
how far back do you think mouse and rat? Let's look it up.
I would really like to go to bed.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, fine. Well then, forget it. We'll leave this discussion for another time.
Well, okay.
Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say goodnight, Justin.
You guys gotta break
good night,
it down.
Justin. Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science. We'll be back next week where we can continue the Neanderthal conversation in the after show.
Inevitably.
Yes, I love it. Let's keep it going, but not tonight. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for watching.
I'll see you in mere hours.
Hours. I love it.